Welcome to Veterans Helping Veterans, the show that informs, educates, and motivates veterans to apply for and learn about benefits and to learn about each other.
We want to take this time to thank our fellow veteran and producer Cheryl Shaper for this opportunity.
We are your co-hosts for today's show, a couple of Latina military veteran aviators. Olivia, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Olivia Chavez-Carroll. I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran as well as a combat Chinook pilot. I am the first Latina to ever fly for the state of South Carolina, and I'm a Mustanger. I reached the rank of captain in the United States Army.
And I am Graciela Tiscareno-Sato, daughter of Mexican immigrants, who served in the United States Air Force for 9.5 years on board the KC135 Refueling Tanker. Basically, my office was a flying gas station. Olivia, and I am going to call you OJ.
Okay.
I'm intrigued with the fact that you've served in 2 of our military branches. What inspired you to join the military in the first place?
Family. My family lineage, my uncle, Louis, he was actually born in Mexico. He was born in Guadalajara, and he is the reason, one of the reasons I joined. He was the Marine Corps. He was in Vietnam. My brother also was in the Navy, and he was getting ready to fly, be in submarines. So I definitely had a family there.
So lots of family members.
Yes, yes. I had 15 family members in the military. And currently I have a cousin who's deployed with the Marine Corps.
Wow. I can't imagine. What a strong tradition. I really can't imagine. But did you always know that you were going to serve and like had other women in your family served?
Well, no. No, that's no to both questions. I didn't think I had no idea that I was going to serve. But it wasn't until when I was in high school is when I started to realize that there was something else. There was something bigger that I was supposed to do. By the time I was a teenager, I'd already been dancing professionally. And I danced in New York, I danced in Mexico, I toured Mexico. So there was something bigger out there. And I didn't want to become a statistic. I had not truly set myself up for success in high school. So I was the type of student that, I struggled during the school year, fell asleep, but got straight A's in summer school. Now I believe they call it, what, ADHD? Or something like that. So the technical, as far as being tactile and learning on those verbal cues, that's probably another reason why I did well in aviation.
So let me get this straight. You were a serious dancer as a child and as a teenager, and no women in your family had served in the military, right? And so how on earth did you choose to serve in the Marine Corps? Actually,
that would be my Uncle Louis. He was a KC135 Marine Corps survivor, and he's the one who instilled the desire to go to the Marine Corps and create a Marine Corps lineage even in my family as a whole. So that I had it in my blood, I guess is what you could say. So, and then my father had sent me to Texas to go stay with my uncle for about 30 days, about 6 weeks actually. And he said, okay, go there, see how it goes. And I got back about 6 weeks later, but I knew that I was in the right place because there was a PFC, an E2 in the Marine Corps. She was the one who ran our PT, our physical fitness. And I thought, you know what, I'm at the right place. This is a woman that's teaching me how to do this, so I thought, okay, I belong here. But I remember when I told my parents, my father, I distinctly remember we were making carnes outside in the backyard. He said to me, if you go, don't quit. But if you quit, don't come home.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was intense. So it was the combination, I guess, of him encouraging me, but also a way for me to make sure that I finished what I had started, so that I would go ahead and I would make something. But I guess that's another reason why I have such an anxiety of failure.
Yeah, when your father says that to you, I guess failure really isn't an option, is it? Yeah.
But hold on a second. I mean, I know that we're here together, we're co-hosting. So why am I answering all the questions? Tell us about what things were for you. How did you discover the military?
Well, my story is an exact contrast to yours because I'm the daughter of immigrants and we had 0 military experience in my family at all. In fact, I didn't even know anything about military service. I was born barely in the USA, like a quarter mile north of the border in El Paso to Arturo and Tina. So it's really incredible. I knew nothing.
Wow. Wow. And so what about, the Air Force, I mean, you joined the Air Force.
Well, I like to say the Air Force chose me, again, in my ignorance. You know, in high school, I would see the recruiters set up on the side of the cafeteria, and I would walk over here. Totally avoided them.
And why'd you do that?
Well, because I really thought they were there to persuade kids not to go to college and to just enlist.
Oh, okay.
And that's all I knew, because that's what kids are doing. And so I knew that I wanted to go to college. You know, like you, I was aspiring to something more, to find a way to leave my small town. And I wanted my adult life to look more like my friends' lives. And they had college-educated parents. They took trips to France and Austria in the summer. And my family, well, the 5 kids and the parents piled into the station wagon and we drove to El Paso. That was our summer, to visit our tias and our primas all the time. So, you know, can you relate?
Definitely. I can definitely relate to that one.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
And so I kept showing up in my counselor's office saying, well, how does a kid like me, born to immigrants with 4 siblings, how do I get to go to college? My friends seem to think that it's possible, but how does that happen? And I got really lucky. My counselor, she said, come to my house for dinner, because my husband's family was bigger than yours, and he will tell you what he did to go to college. And that is how I met Air Force Major Burgess, who told me about the Air Force ROTC scholarships, and that he mentored me through the application process, and then my counselor helped me with the college application process. So I remember my senior year, like February 5th, my senior year, I got 2 letters in the mail. The first one saying, congratulations, you've been admitted to UC Berkeley, and the second one saying the Air Force has awarded you a 4-year ROTC scholarship and next steps. So that's really how it happened.
Wow. Timing's everything. I mean, which is great because you're actively asking, you're actively trying to find out what to do, how you're going to get into college.
Yeah.
But I'm still trying, you know, you're at Berkeley, you're on this scholarship, but I mean, that's not aviation.
It's so not aviation, and that's the really weird part, because I had declared my architecture degree coming in. I was in the architecture school. So I was supposed to go do architectural engineering, civil engineering, things like that. Technical degree, but halfway through ROTC, the Air Force takes you to multiple Air Force bases for career exploration. And one of the bases was Vandenberg Air Force Base in Southern California, where I met a female civil engineer who basically was working where I'd be working. And I told her my plan. And she said, no, you're not going to be designing brand new buildings on Air Force bases. They contract that out to civilians. And I was crushed. And I said, well, what will I be doing? She said, you'll be filling potholes for generals and for the people who complain loudest in base housing. And then I was totally horrified. But luckily, the very next day, they flew us out to Williams Air Force Base in Phoenix, Arizona, where you could sign up for an orientation flight. And I was the roller coaster junkie, and I said, no way am I passing this up. So I found myself in a T-37 with Captain Dolly DeLisa, the instructor pilot. And she taught me to fly the plane and do aileron rolls, and I had so much fun doing it. And on the way back, as we were taxiing, she said to me, and keep in mind, you know, I had never been on an airplane as a kid. So I'm literally in this military jet flying around over the Arizona desert, right? And she said, it looks like you really enjoyed yourself. Is this something you think you might want to do? And I said, I'd love to do this, but I have the scholarship in civil engineering. And she says, no, it doesn't work that way. Just go back and tell the staff you want to fly. Those are some profound words, and I followed her advice, and she said, depending on the needs of the Air Force, you'll be selected to be a pilot or a navigator, and this is something you can do. Ultimately, I was selected for undergraduate navigator training, and then 4 years later, when I graduated from that basic undergraduate navigator school, my now husband of 27 years was there that day to pin my silver wings on my uniform. And then from there, you know, it was still the time of combat exclusion, so I selected the KC135 tanker. Weird, huh?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, some people think it is, but I personally, I kind of understand. I mean, it kind of reminds me a little bit about my story, about how I started and what made me go into aviation.
Well, how did it happen for you?
So at the time, I had just joined the South Carolina Army National Guard. And I had a captain by the name of Captain Priester. He's a lieutenant colonel now out of the South Carolina Guard, and he was a Black Hawk pilot. And I remember him poking his head in the office, and he said, "So I hear you want to be an officer." And I was like, well, yeah, but I'm too old, you know. And back in the Marine Corps, you had to be already commissioned by your 27th birthday, and I'd seen that, done that, so it was already gone. He's like, no, not in the Army. So I was like, okay, so right then is when I started to put my packet together, submitted my packet, and within a couple months, I mean, I was in OCS, in Officer Candidate School, in South Carolina. I went to the Palmetto Military Academy in South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, which is, you know, it was kind of home to me because I had gone to boot camp at Parris Island, South Carolina, where they, you know, that's the only place they make Marines, female Marines, and so, you know, I was used to that. I enjoyed it, but I realized that it was then that I realized that, you know, the Marine Corps taught me how to go after what I wanted. So one of the things I like to tell people is that I was raised by the Corps, but the Army gave me my career because that's where I became an officer. That's where I, you know, started to flourish.
Well, it sounds like both of us were fortunate enough to have other military aviators come along in our lives.
Oh, yes.
And nudge us in this direction of these careers that some would say are highly unusual for women like us, yeah?
Yeah. Hello. I'm like, if I stood here, you'd tell I'm 5 feet tall. So I'm not very tall, and if you look, this is the aircraft that I flew, the CH-47 Chinook, and that baby is what, 100 feet. She's a flying bus. You know, she's a green bus flying, and that is what I flew. So, yeah.
Well, tell us more about that. Like, what was the training like for you, in Army flight training?
Well, you know, do you think I went to flight school in 2006? So you can imagine, unfortunately, there's still people that really didn't want me there. They really weren't completely sold on the idea of women. Not only that, but usually in the Army, aviators are warrant officers. They're the ones that fly more. So for me, I kind of had the feeling like, okay, I was a commissioned officer, strike one. I was the National Guard, strike two. And they may not wanted to say it out loud, but I was a woman, strike three. And then I was Latina, I was out. And the reason I say that is because here I am in my second service, right? I was given waivers to go to flight school because of my classes, because of my height. But I was, you know, I was highly encouraged to continue to move on. But I was 30 days away from graduating and from finishing my flight training as a Apache pilot in the Delta model, which is the new version. And so we were, you know, truly, it was disappointing. It was disappointing. And I had a general tell me in his office with his big pen, I can't do it, the flinging thing. You guys probably, that's know what I'm talking about. He said, you know, Lieutenant Chavez, when are you going to realize that you don't belong here?
Wow. How do you respond to that?
Actually, I took a deep breath like you just did, and I was like, okay, just tighten up, make it happen. And I looked at him and I said, you know, sir, the day that you pack my bags is the day that I know that I no longer belong here.
Oh, so you put this right back on him.
Yeah.
Very smart.
I did. I didn't to be honest, smart now, but hindsight 2020, I was freaking out because he goes, I'm going to give you exactly what you want. And I was like, oh God. But he did. I ended up in a Chinook in the very next class.
Incredible. You know, I'm hearing your story and I'm reminded that it's a story of resilience and about the fight that women who are pioneering like you, that are the first to go, what you had to do to literally battle to just exist and be there and persist and to finish your training, right? It's very real, and a lot of people do want to keep, you know, spaces 100% male, and you pushed right through that, so I commend you for that.
And you?
So yeah, so the Chinook. So tell us more about the mission, and do you start out like a baby co-pilot like in the Air Force, or how does it work in the Chinook?
Well, no, not actually. You go in there and it's a shared cockpit. Excuse me, and we have, so although there's a pilot in command, that person who's key responsible, we both fly. We're both pilots. So it's a split cockpit. You have one that's actually physically flying, one that's doing the navigating, that's, you know, kind of looking ahead, what's happening on the radios, that kind of stuff. And then we are actually a heavy lift. So you are dealing with equipment that you're hauling. We're hauling, and our troops were able to load up 33 fully loaded troops, as well as there's the pilot, you know, 2 pilots, a flight engineer, and a crew chief. So there's 4 of us in the crew. So during an operation and during Freedom, I I had the opportunity to do sling loads of Humvees, of Bobcats, as well as fuel blivets. So these are these big balloon things that are full of fuel. And we've even, I had some that did downed aircraft, so they were able to sling Apaches and Chinooks. I mean, excuse me, not Chinooks, but Blackhawks.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
So what I find most interesting about your story is this idea of a tiny woman flying this giant helicopter with hooks and picking up Humvees and everything. So what's a memory that you have specifically about being deployed as a combat helicopter pilot?
So, well, actually, you know, one is definitely we flew for, we actually were the QRF, which is the crew that was waiting to see if anything happened. We were there, the Quick Reactionary Force. And it was quiet that day. So for me, that was profound because of the fact that, you know, when you look on the news and you see the women with the purple stamp because of the voting for the first time, that was huge for me.
Oh, so you were there during the first election in Afghanistan?
Yes, okay. During the very first election of Afghanistan. And so, but as far as flying is concerned, now that was, I'm going to tell you, we were up in the Hindu Kush, which is up in the northeast part of Afghanistan, and we were trying to do a load of blivet and drop a load of actual fuel. And so I couldn't get it to stick, basically, because we had crosswinds, gravity. I mean, the terrain was pretty rough. And the IP, the instructor pilot that was with me, got frustrated. And he I got the controls, and he takes the controls, and he's going to do his thing. And I'll be honest, I'm glad I had a shade. I had my visor on, and it was a dark visor, and thank God, because I rolled my eyes probably all the way back to kindergarten because I was so pissed. I was so upset, because he spoke to me as if though you're green, you're stupid, you're dumb, you know, like all of this negativity that he threw at me, and then he jettisons the blivet, and it rolled boom, boom, boom down the hill. And it exploded. So I mean, it didn't explode like in fire, but all the fuel went all over the place, and I guess part of me, I felt like, you know what, that's what your ego gets. But,
so you're being cautious and trying to do it right, and he was just trying to show you how it's supposed to be done.
Oh yeah, and
that didn't work out really well.
No, definitely.
Wow.
So what about your deployment? I mean, you deployed. What was that like for you?
Yeah, you know, I was actually in the middle of my training on a nighttime check ride when the war broke out over Baghdad. And we heard on the radio that the skies in Baghdad are lit up, and it's being broadcast live all over the world on CNN. And so yeah, within 4 months of arriving at my first duty station, I found myself over in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And this is the early days of Operation Southern Watch. My crew was one of the very first ones there to enforce the no-fly zone that had been established. And this is when Saddam Hussein had his Air Force of MiGs that he would launch daily, because the MiGs really would like to take out the gas station up there that's doing the continuous refueling to make our 24/7 combat air patrol possible, and was keeping his airplanes on the ground. And the reason we were there is because he wanted to launch air operations against civilians, you know, the Kurdish people specifically. So every sortie that we flew was a combat sortie over Iraqi airspace or over the Red Sea, supporting our Navy jets launching off of the carriers, which is cool to watch. So I reflect and I think incredibly, my first time existing outside North America, and I find myself on daily combat missions, getting chased by MiGs over Iraq, and then ultimately earning an air medal. So pretty weird, huh?
Oh, the air medal is beautiful. You know,
and everything after that, all deployments after that, paled in comparison.
Well, I believe me. I mean, I've been in the air, but I've not been, you know, and been able to do that. So I will say, you know, from our deployments, and I'm curious to know from you, what would you say, you know, to young women and young men out there that are watching? What would you say about them about a military career?
You know, I'm eternally grateful for the Air Force that made my Berkeley education possible, especially as a daughter of immigrants. I'm eternally grateful for that, for the scholarship. And for everybody, I really believe there's no place better than the Air Force to master the technologies that operate and support the world's most incredible air and space force that we have in this country. The tagline for the Air Force is aim high, and that's really what we do in the Air Force. You know, to the women, I want to say it's incredible. In half of my lifetime, I have seen our armed forces go from, no, you cannot have that combat jet that you qualified for, to lifting the combat exclusion, to women stepping into every aircraft, finally having all our best aviators really flying every aircraft, to leadership, to flight commanders, squadron commanders, wing commanders, all the way through. And I remember when the very first woman who's a fighter pilot born female was announced, Lieutenant Jeannie Flynn, when that first happened, And she became the first woman to head up a fighter wing. And for fun, I want people to look at the video of Nellis Air Force Base with General Leavitt and Brie Larson, the actress of Captain Marvel, when they went out there. And Brie Larson is really worshiping the real rock star in the scene, which is the general. And today, Jeannie Leavitt, whose career I followed, she is now the commander. She's a major general, 2-star, of the entire recruiting service for the Air Force.
That's
so
awesome.
What an incredible statement. So ladies, if you ever want to work somewhere and not suffer from a pay gap, join the Air Force because you will be paid for the same work that a man does, all the time. And then when you have that experience as a young woman, you will never accept as a civilian anything less. You'll always demand equal pay. And of course, incredible leadership opportunities. I don't think people know this, OJ. The Air Force is now 28% female. 28% female, and I've witnessed all these fast changes in half of my adult life. So I find it really incredible, and I can't wait to see what women in the Air Force will accomplish next.
That's exciting. That's really exciting.
Well, and how about you? What would you like to say to young people thinking of joining the military?
Well, what I would say, I have to start out with a quote from my Uncle Louis. He told me in the very beginning, the military will give you everything that you want. But it'll make you or it'll break you. It depends what you take from it.
Right. True.
I mean, and that's key for me, and for women, know that you belong here. Yeah. Like, you belong in this service. You have a purpose, and we are part of this. We're part of the military. So to not allow anything to be a barrier. And as far as anyone who's been in the service or plans to go in the service, if you have worn the uniform, you are a veteran. If you have a DD-214, you're a veteran, and you have benefits. Yeah. So that's key for me. That's very important that they know.
That's good. Very important advice.
But we both have reached another stage, right? So now we've got our projects. What kind of projects are you working on right now?
The projects that this reminds me of the time that you and I met. Perfect time. Good. You and I met, and we met in Sacramento at the Calvet Summit. Do you remember that?
Yes. That's where I met your son.
Yeah, so we were there because I had just published my first bilingual children's book. And I remember you walked up to me and you saw a book written by a fellow Latina veteran in English and Spanish, and you said, "Ay, Dios mío." Yep. And so the Passion Project, there's two. And this first one comes out of my son seeing me in my flight suit on his way to bed the night before Veterans Day. And I said to my husband, grab the camera. He's never seen me in my uniform. What's he going to say? And I've been invited to his preschool, and this is literally 10 years after I left the Air Force, and I still had not shown up in my community visibly at all. And so the preschool teacher invited veterans to come, and I was the only mommy in the preschool who had served. So I said, I'm gonna go, and I was getting my uniform ready and stuff. So he comes in the room, he starts pulling off the patches, and there's actually a video clip at CaptainMama.com about what happened that night. But the most important thing is my son, who was about 4 at the time, said, I love you, Captain Mama. So he invented this character as he left the room, and I stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning, wondering, do women veterans even write books for kids? Has that even happened? And I found 2. So I've created an educational publishing company to do just that, to tell my service story through bilingual children's books in English and Spanish.
That's amazing.
And I'm very proud that we've won 6 literary awards already for our books as we produce the 3rd one. And I just want little kids to be inspired and to imagine with their young minds, because they are paying attention, what's possible for them if they just dream crazy, crazy dreams. Yeah. And I also encourage women, I want my example as an author and a speaker to encourage women to just call the nearest, women veterans, call the nearest school and say, hey, I live in the neighborhood, I'd love to come to the school and talk for Veterans Day, because we have to show up, right? And the second passion project is directly serving my fellow veterans by teaching them authentic personal branding workshops. Awesome. And I really want them to be able to create their own brands as they transition, as they launch businesses, and it's really important. So I guess you could say I'm a storyteller who encourages other veterans to become epic storytellers of their own value.
Awesome.
So tell me about the passion work that you're doing these days.
Well, I have it's the wellness shop. So I've taken my nonprofit, the Veteran Awareness Project, and I have basically merged it together with self-care. Self-care, the wellness shop. And this has been a labor of love for me. want to know that I'm able to help teach through social media, you know, going live on Instagram, going live on Facebook, to share how do we take care of ourselves. You know, that it's not financially irresponsible to take care of ourselves. It is okay, you know, going and buying good food, going and buying, you know, top tier nutrients, buying good hair care, skin care, knowing why is my hair falling out? It's called stress. How do you deal with that stress? You know, and my husband, you know, I'm very fortunate. We ironically just got married 2 years ago, and so he has been a big part of this aftermath of the military. Like you had your children after, I got married afterwards, and so, you know, Jacob has been such a big part of that, part of me pushing for that self-care part, because I didn't learn that.
I didn't learn that. I didn't learn that growing up. I didn't have those role models.
No, and we weren't taught to take care of ourselves, and so now that really forces and pushes me to teach others how we can take care of ourselves and grow our longevity.
Yeah, so how do you do that, and how can people stay in touch with you online?
So I do it online, like I said, and I go through either Instagram or Facebook, and it's Olivia Carroll. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can reach me on all social media platforms, and then or the Wellness Shop.
Okay.
Okay, and what about you?
I'm at CaptainMama.com very easily.
Awesome.
And so I want to wrap up with this. One of the happiest days of my life was the day I became a second lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force. My mom and dad pinning the butter bars on my uniform. And if I lived my life over again, I would make the same choices. How about you?
For me, it would be my son. Thanking Andres Sanchez, my son, for enduring all that he had endured for my 22 years of service. And knowing that he is loved, he's cherished, and you know, I do this all for him too.
Yeah, I'm happy that we overcame our fear and that we started our journey along the way, and that others showed up to move us along in our potential.
Exactly.
So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for joining us at Veterans Helping Veterans tonight.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you.